doesn't really mind whether you devalue yourself as a person or you elevate yourself as a person. I mean, I think in this world, elevating yourself as a person is so kind of accepted, you know, as the norm. You're supposed to try to elevate yourself as a person. And, you know, it's almost like puffing up a mask, just puffing and puffing and puffing and puffing. And there's no peace with that. It never ends. You can never puff enough. You never can have enough pride that it will wash away the guilt that's underneath the pride. So it is a sneaky trap in the sense of, even when spirituality is somehow stuck on the timeline, like the person's on the timeline, so the ego says, well, the spirit's on the timeline too then, which it's not. The I am is before the timeline. And then it's like kind of gliding along and trying to dupe yourself or convince yourself into how spiritual you are. And you can do it with practices, spiritual practices, or spiritual achievements, you know, spiritual awards, like you do with song, music, and motion pictures and everything else. They do the same. It's a big trap whenever there's a personal identity that's involved. And that's why the whole talk yesterday was about being, you know, clueless, carefree, and cared for. That clueless is really allowing yourself permission to drop all those thoughts about identity. And the conditioning is that you need to be competent and good, and you need to have a good, strong, adequate, secure personal identity. And as the ego mind has tried to do, it has never been able to develop a sense of certainty in the personality self. I mean, you have people, I mean, I had one person at one gathering one time said, I think there are very successful people in this world that are extremely spiritual, extremely peaceful. I believe you can, you know, have your cake and eat it too. You can be a very successful spiritual person. And I said, have you found one? Have you found any? I mean, even the ones that I think are held up the highest as the icons, the more you investigate the icon, it's quite shocking for most people. I mean, I know they found Mother Teresa's kind of confessions to priests over the years. And this was over many, many decades. And when they published those, I think most of humanity was just shocked, because they thought, well, most of humanity thinks of her as a Nobel Prize laureate winner, and her scooping up babies and picking up people off the street, and watching a documentary of hers, people start to feel calm watching her in action. Then they published the memoirs, and it wasn't a very pretty sight to read. Basically, she had one really, really strong, somewhat sustained experience of Jesus in 1958, I believe it was. 1 year. And people see that life of the decades of devotion and that face with the thousands of wrinkles, and she's held up as the spiritual icon. Well, there's a spiritual person to talk about. Actually, when you start to get behind the mask, you start to find, what's underneath there is there's a lot of darkness, and there's a lot of grappling and working out. It's very, very intense underneath there. Mohandas K. Gandhi, who they called the Mahatma. Gandhi hated being called the Mahatma, because the Mahatma meant great soul. And I read his autobiography, and he was really experimenting with truth, but he was going, like most human beings, through a very torturing time. There was an inner conflict. He could tell you, yeah, there was conflicts he found when he came to South Africa, or certainly with India, Muslims and the Hindus and the British, you know, he would see political conflicts going on, and what seemed to be beatings and all kinds of of oppression and things like this that Nelson Mandela, others have talked about, but the psychic conflict was so intense. And I would say that is the conflict of trying to be a human being, of trying to be a person. If we accept that we already are a person, and then we just try to make a better person, which in this world, it seems to be the thing, you're supposed to attain to being a spiritual person. When we get into the Course in Miracles, Jesus is like saying, it's not that you ask for too much, you ask for far too little. If that's all you're aiming for, is to be a spiritual person, you've really set the bar real low, because the ego invented the person, and now you're going to try to be a spiritual person, or I call it a spiritual mask. You know, the personality, persona in Latin means mask. So a spiritual persona would be a spiritual mask, a contradiction in terms actually, an oxymoron. And we need to be reminded of that, because we're aiming too low. We have to be so in alignment with the Spirit, so in alignment with our guidance every day, that we aim for the highest. Every day we're going for peace of mind. We're going for an intrinsic happiness, not a happy because I got a raise, or happy because this happened in form, or I got a new house, or this or that, I got a promotion. All the things, the kudos the world says you should feel happy for, because those come and go, and those all relate to personhood. And so we're actually going, you might say, on an inward quest to go so deep that we lay aside all thoughts of the person. The positive thoughts, the negative thoughts, all the aspirations and ambitions, and as well as the regrets and the past memories that were so hurtful. We need a total transformation of mind. And the way that we're asked to do it is to come into a function, to just say, just to make a commitment and say to the Spirit, I'm okay, I see how deep this goes. I can really start to get a hint of how deep this rabbit hole goes, but I'm willing to take a leap of faith and just say, lead me, guide me that way. And I'm not only going to do that, but I'm going to trust that the rest of the symbols of the universe will be used by you to come rushing to my benefit. If I need a place to stay, if I need a ride, if I need a helping hand, if I need some money, if I need some food, if I need whatever, if I'm willing to serve your purpose of forgiving and waking up from this dark dream of separation, and you are the Lord of life, you are the source of everything, I trust you're powerful enough to reach me even in a dark dream. Even if it gets to be a nightmare, I still trust that your power is stronger to reach me even in the dark dream. There's going to be an olive branch, there's going to be a rope, there's going to be something I can see and hold on to and be inspired by. Something there to help me, raise me up in awareness out of that. So, to me, that's what we're all talking about. It's not so much, we can never really define the problem or define the solution in terms of form. I had students years ago, and I would talk about non-possession and trust and sharing and everything like this, and then some days I would do like Australia, the Aborigines do walkabout. I would go walkabout in an inner city. Just go walkabout in an inner city. And then some of the students would come along just to see how I would interact with the homeless, how I would walk through the streets. And I had many telepathic encounters. Sometimes so-called homeless people would come up to me and, I know you, man, I feel you, I felt you 10 feet away before you got here. And I had very interesting encounters, because it's just meeting myself. It's the same with animals, you know, I'm just me, I'm myself, I'm unified, and therefore I have great encounters with animals. I came in yesterday and Nick came right over to me real quick before I came in the door. There's reflections of that. St. Francis is quite famous for his flow with the animals, you know, all the animals that were around him. Because you go into this glorious, fearless state of connectivity, and that's where we have the horse whisperers or the lion whisperers and so on and so forth. They're just demonstrations to us that there's nothing to fear, and there's a communion experience that comes in. That's all showing us that what you project or extend, you make real for you. As the lion whisperer, as the horse whisperer extends the love, then the reflection is of that extension. Even in form, it works that way. And those are important. We need those symbols. We need to be convinced of this change of mind from projection to extension. So it works, but we really have to give our heart and soul to this. We're not going to receive, if we put partial effort into it, that's what we're going to get back. And then the ego is going to go, look, see? Look what you're dealing with here. It's going to make another case, like, see, it doesn't work. But if we give our heart over, we say, I'm giving you everything, Lord, I'm really going to trust you, I'm giving it all over to you, then we're going to receive the blessings of that very devotion. In fact, there's a line in the Course where Jesus says that a teacher of God is entitled to devotion if he is devoted. You see how it's that as you sow shall you reap. It's not that you personally are entitled to have somebody going around and fanning you and washing your feet all the time and doing your fingernails and whatever like this. It's not what he's talking about. He's like saying, if you have a heart of devotion, if your heart is aligned with God, with love, then you'll have reflections around you of that. You'll just be surrounded with you. I was giving a talk one time, and I was outdoors, and I was on a blanket, and I was giving a talk in, I think it was in Michigan, and I was talking, and I was just, all this love was pouring through me, and I was giving a session. It was, instead of a sermon on the mount, it was a sermon on the blanket, and it was just pouring through. And all of a sudden, a whole swarm of bees, maybe about 20, 25 bees, came and started doing all this halo stuff above my head while I was giving the sermon. Well, there was maybe 6 or 7 people around there, all like looking at me funny. I don't know why they had such a funny look while I was talking. I just continued on. They're all like, and then started pointing above my head, and finally, after they kept pointing, I thought the sermon was wonderful, but then I thought, oh, it's just that. Let's get back to, that's just a symbol. The bees were doing all kinds of gyrations and halos and things up there, but it was just all about the love. You always come back to focus. Take your mind off the appearances. The appearances mean nothing. Just come back to the love. Even Peace Pilgrim, this great mystic, she one time, they asked her about her mystical experiences and community experiences and everything, and she said, well, actually the phenomenon don't really matter at all. She was almost like, just took it away from the phenomenon. She said, I'll tell you about it if you want to hear about it, but don't make anything of it. Because only a person makes something of it. Make something of it like, oh, I want that. I want that for me too. I want to get that kind of phenomenal experience, even walking across hot coals and everything. Who is it that wants to grab on and put that on their spiritual resume? It's the ego. Oh, I walked on hot coals. Oh, to see how it's all these different phenomenal things. The ego can jump on this spiritual journey in a big way. It's going to try to ride along and hop on the coattails, and it can't really hang on to the Holy Spirit. It doesn't even know the Holy Spirit, but it's going to try. It's going to try. Thank you. The way we can, we're on today the theme of simplicity, so I love your question coming with the theme of simplicity. We're going to let that complexity meet absolute, utter simplicity, and we're going to just watch as they come together. And that's going to be so much fun. Extreme complexity coming together with utter simplicity. It's kind of like, some of us are familiar with solar eclipses or lunar eclipses. When an eclipse occurs, you have these two things, and then when one goes in front of the other, that would be like a total eclipse. Or some of you know that song? Nothing left to say, the total eclipse of the heart. A total eclipse of the heart. Let's wonder what that is. If our heart is a heart of love, then a total eclipse of the heart would be a dark shadow covering over our heart. A total eclipse. So basically, let's take some ideas from the Course in Miracles. Jesus talks a lot in the Course in Miracles about the holy instant. That's a very important theme. It's very deep, it's very important. And Jesus also talks about the unholy instant. And the holy instant and the unholy instant are actually like the thought of separation and the answer of the Holy Spirit occurred simultaneously. They weren't, there wasn't a gap in between them, so it wasn't like, or even, it wasn't. It was. That's how long it took to answer the unholy instant, the tiny gap, the tiny tick of terror. It's called by different names in the Course. So there's different lines in the Course where Jesus starts to dispel the script entirely. There's one line in the Course where Jesus says, you may become depressed to think how long it will take you to change your mind so completely. I mean, from egoic timeline to back to eternity. You may become depressed. And then you say, where's he going with this? You may become depressed to think how long it's going to take to change your mind so completely. He says, ask yourself, how long is an instant? That's how he answers the first part of the question with one of his own questions, how long is an instant? So, maybe I should play a song too, lead into this. This is so good. It's actually coming down to this idea that the script itself is a metaphor, and that the entire script that through the ego is perceived as linear time, the cosmos and everything, is all just one instant. And Jesus calls it the unholy instant, the time of terror. That's what time is. If you compressed it down from its long version, you would see that you're just looking at it from a distorted angle. Almost like if you had like, some of you have seen my spaghetti talk where I take a spaghetti noodle and then it looks very long, the spaghetti does, and then you turn it right on its edge, and what do you got? It's a point. Just from a different perspective, that whole long spaghetti thing turns into a point. That's that little tweak. That's what the Holy Spirit is doing in our mind. He's turning us around to that point. This particular song and this particular lesson from the Course is going to help us at bringing what Jeremy has talked about, like this extremely complex script, together with the simplest teachings in all of the universe. And coming together, instead of dissociating and trying to keep them both real and keep them apart, we're actually looking at actually bringing them together. And that's what this workbook lesson does, that's what this song does. The lesson is, only an instant does this world endure. You see how when the mind falls asleep and is dreaming, it perceives the unholy instant as a long, long, long thing of many, many complex encounters and interactions, many levels, many layers, huge amounts of complexity, and actually it's one instant that in fact has actually been eclipsed, we'll say, by the holy instant. It's actually already been eclipsed. And that's why when I talk about atonement, I can use the words, but it's more a state of mind, a joy that's teaching that this world is over. And now my friend Elisa Moore, she made an album with an infinity sign on the front. And so I'll play that. This is the song. And you'll notice if you pay attention to this song, at first she's going to have like one of these Moorfield thunderstorms. She's going to have lightning and she's going to have thunder. She's adding some sound effects to the Course in Miracles workbook lesson. She's going to bring in the darkness because she's going to start with the unholy instant. And the Course tells us we have to bring the darkness to the light. But she's coming at it from an instant point of view. So this is the thought which God can use to tell you, first of all, about the unholy instant, that the sorrow and death are the certain lot of all who come here. People go, is that really in the Course? Yes. This instant, this unholy instant is like teaching that sorrow and death are the certain lot of all those who come here. And then it's going to talk about, and even their joys can't be grasped or even possessed. In other words, this instant, unholy instant, just slithers away and is replaced by true identity, by holiness, instantaneous, if we allow it. And when we fight against the light, we get into the predicament of a linear script that's extremely complex and seems to have no end. It just goes on and on and on and on. So let's just use this song as a meditation, and then let's come together to bring the complex together with the simplicity.
More than a past.
That's a beautiful song, all from the Course. Those lyrics are all from the Course. And that's where the complex, layered, challenging, difficult scripts of the ego were all spun out in one instant. And they seem to have left the source of the mind and now be a part of like a long movie that just goes on and on and on. Evolutionary movie. We're watching landscaping every day. We watch this evolutionary movie. And it's all emanates from one instant. And when you say, where did it come from? Who made these complex scripts? It's the ego. A lot of us were raised with Christianity. God's created the heaven and the earth. No, God created the heavens. The ego projected the cosmos, the linear cosmos with time and space, and it's the ego that's behind it. And we can't say the ego created it, because only God creates in spirit and Christ creates in spirit, but the ego projects, the ego makes, the ego is fictitious, the ego invents. It's a lie. It's a long generated lie. And there was one point when Helen Schuckman was working with Jesus where he actually did like I do the spaghetti thing where I turn the spaghetti to the point. He actually took her on one of these perspectives where he shifted her entire perspective of the timeline. When she was with him, it was very much a point when he traveled with her, they zoomed across this timeline so fast that they almost missed her entire lifetime as Helen Schuckman. It was so insignificant in this line. The human life from birth to death was so insignificant because it's just a generated, fictitious, like a spiral of nothingness. It has no meaning whatsoever. Now, but I said the Holy Spirit answered this tiny tick of terror, this instant, in an instant, and it was solved. So now we might say the healing is just accepting the correction, accepting the holy instant. Now how do we do that in everyday life? It seems so far removed from human experience. I mean, even hearing that song, it's like, and we give thanks today, the world endured for but an instant. Has anybody woke up giving thanks for that? Oh, wake up in the morning, I give thanks today, the world endured for but an instant. And it's over, you know. That's usually not the kind of thanks you're giving. Thank you for the sunshine today, thank you for the rain when it's dry, you know, blah, blah. You know, you see, ultimately, the gratitude and the thankfulness have to go into that the problem is gone. It can't be forever dissecting the problem, forever analyzing the problem, forever telling the stories, which are all part of the timeline, which none of have to do with the correction. But what's underneath storytelling? Because a lot of times storytelling can be a source that, as you perceive it, as irritation, but really the reason that the story would be irritating would just be reminding you of the unholy instant. Like somehow that you're still smack dab in the middle of the unholy instant, and the story that's being told is just reminding you of that unholy instant. That's where the irritation, the anger, the annoyance come in. So Jesus says there's one question that you can ask with anything. And that's great when he simplifies it. It's good. Anything I can conceive of, there's only one question that I can ask of it, and that is, what is it for? So let's be practical. Maybe like today you've had lots of logistical things to deal with because you're here and you're stewarding for the Holy Spirit, you're stewarding Moorfield for a very high purpose. And yet, when you look at it through that filter of the scripts and all the various levels and integrated points and so on and so forth, it can be like a madhouse. It can just be like an absolute madhouse. And then the only way to pull you out of that unholy instant, that identification with the darkness, would be, what is it for? What is the purpose? There has to be something that we can ask with anything that we're doing. When we're when we're eating, when we're doing the dishes, when we're fixing a faucet, when we're feeding the chickens, when we're mowing the grass, when we're doing anything, you could say anything or anyone doing anything, walking here at Moorfield, anything. It's really what Jesus is going to use to pull us back into the holy instant is what is it for? I remember when I was first traveling around the United States, I was getting guidance, go here, go there. I was having so many miracles, and I would go around and I would meet all these people. And I was down in Florida one time, and I met this man who was in his 70s, and people were talking about him, and they told me where he lived, and I said, I'm going to visit him again when I get up to Kentucky. And when I went up, he was kind of living on a side of a mountain, and his name was Harold Cole, and my friend and I went in there, and he said, come, stay with me tonight, and have dinner with me. And he had seeded all these Course in Miracles groups all over Florida. He just went down there with boxes full of books and going and sharing these books and starting course groups left and right, like a Johnny Appleseed, the Swedenborgian minister, except a Course in Miracles teacher. And he was in his 70s, and he was just glowing, and he was beaming. We had this great meal with him, and then after the meal was over, both my friend and I said, can we help out in any way? Can we, do the dishes or something? And he turned with the biggest smile on his face, and he didn't give me a yes or no answer. He just gave me a statement. He said, if it brings you joy. It was so cool. That's what I like. Course in Miracles in action. If it brings you joy. Can I help you with the dishes? If it brings you joy. It's the motivation. The only way we're drawn out of complexity is through the simplicity. And what could be simpler than to find the inspiration within us and live from that inspiration? Not from fear of consequences, not from obligation, not from duty. This ego thing, this unholy instant, is all caught up in reciprocity. And I had fun when I was traveling those first 5 years from 1991 to 1996. I wasn't used to traveling, and I was raised with the Protestant work ethic. You stay with friends, you stay in motels or hotels when you go somewhere. You provide for yourself, you pay for your meals, you do everything. You're a responsible, adult, functioning citizen, and you do it this way. Otherwise, you're just a plain old, lazy, no-good, rotten freeloader. If you don't. If people give you a gift occasionally, you maybe take it. You grumble a little. You shouldn't. Okay. But usually that's a very rare thing. You've got to provide for yourself and this and this. So when I'm out for the first trip in 1991, and then the next one follows, but that's why I told you I had to learn to just flow and stay in what is it for? Oh, that's right. I'm here to extend miracles. That's right. I'm a miracle worker. I'm just supposed to just extend the happiness and joy. And that's right. You will take care of me. That there won't even be a problem that will come into my awareness, because He will go before you. Jesus says in the Course, He, the Holy Spirit, will go before you, making straight your path and leaving in your way no stones to trip on, no obstacles to bar your way. You need take thought for nothing, except the only purpose that you would fulfill. So you got your high note. You're here to be the light of the world, and if you're the light of the world, the Holy Spirit will take care, Jesus will take care of everything else. That's the promise. That's the promise. So I took him up on it, and again, he was right. And again, all my upbringing, all my Protestant work ethic and my training of provide for myself, all of that turned out to be a hoax. And Jesus turned out to be right. And how that happened would be going out, following the guidance, staying with somebody, coming in the last 10 minutes of a course group one time and going out to lunch. People took me to lunch, took me to the houseboat. I did a gathering on top of their houseboat. They all went to work on Monday morning and say, stay in the houseboat for as long as you want. It was almost like a surreal kind of very surreal, joyful fairy tale. And it was almost like Jesus smiling and laughing, saying, I'm going to knock your socks off. Or to think you know something, this I know mind, thinks it knows how to provide for itself, thinks it knows how to earn money, thinks it knows how to save money, thinks it knows how to spend money, thinks it knows how to use tools and build things and do things. I know. I'm going to knock your socks off. Just knock them off. I mean, that's the way that Jesus works. If you'll let him, out they go. And then the people who travel with me, they'd say, where are we going to get the money? How are we going to get the petrol? What are we going to do? I said, I used to ask that question until, it's like, I said to her, the one who was traveling with me on one of the trips, Jesus is going to knock your socks off too. He didn't just knock mine off, he'll knock yours off too. She traveled with me for a while, and she literally had to let go of 3 jobs to travel with me. While she was halfway through the trip, she called back to her landlord and let go of her apartment, her lease. She called in, let go, as she progressively had her socks knocked off, I mean way off, and flying in the breeze. She really let go of trying to control life and provide for herself and to really trust. And that's the biggest turn. That seems to go against everything we've been raised with. And then I know those are the themes that are coming up for a lot of you. There's financial things. It seems to be extremely, extremely important in the ego system. And that's how it keeps this complexity. We've got all these plates spinning. And we're like the guy in the circus, the clown who spins the plates with the poles. And we're just running from pole to pole, we're spinning plates. And if sometimes we mess up and trip a little bit, some plates come crashing down. But the fear is that all the plates will come down. We've got to keep some spinning. When actually, we don't really need to keep spinning the plates at all. That's the thing about this. You have to keep asking the question, what is it for? What is it for? We've talked about, like with raising young children, if you project that out into the future, it's like, well, the next 15, 20 years of my life, they're gone. I've spent them already. It's called children. I spent them. I had some free time. No, that's spent. My finance, they're already spent. I've invested. I'm heavily invested. Not in stocks or bonds. Children, 15 years. And, and then how do we leave space for the Holy Spirit if that's the case, Maybe we don't know how the script is going to go. We don't know how it's going to play out. Or if you're pregnant, it could. There's an investment with that. It seems to be in this world. It's tied into this linear time thing. But I just started asking, what is it for with everything? What is it for when I'm reading a book? When I'm doing something? Because I just didn't like the weight of feeling the obligations, the duties, the personal responsibilities, heavy. So many heavy weights that no wonder we walk around, just like dragging sometimes. Like we come home from work and it's been like Friday of a difficult work week, and we drag in and we sprawl out on the couch. Like, just a moment of rest here before I have to get dinner ready. It's like, already the ego is haunting us with the next task. It's going to hammer. We've been hammered all week, and it's going to hammer us with another one. But you find when you get into this giving mode, when you get into this extending mode, when you really just humbly say, maybe Jesus is right. If I serve the function, maybe he actually will follow through with his promise. This is someone who has come through the keyhole of time and space, and now is speaking to us from eternity, who's not even in time and space, and really never was. It just kind of looked that way for a few years, but he never really was there. He's just like saying, he's ringing the eternity bell, like that song, identity, eternity, those were the high notes. He's like saying, if you'll follow with this, if you just make the effort to ask what is this for, you'll find that all of the compromises in your life, all of those shoulds, have-tos, ought-tos, must, all the contracts, everything that we signed, whether they're written or unwritten contracts that we have in our mind, they're all part of the complexity. Even nowadays, when I'm invited to speak at a Course in Miracles conference and they send me a contract in the mail, I still am like, my God, this is a Course in Miracles. You know, I went 20-some years, we never had contracts. We didn't even have handshakes. It was just on your word. You'll be there at such and such a day, such and such a time. We'll do this, we'll help with your airfare, and we'll put you up, and or this and this. I mean, that's come nowadays with big conferences, but I used to just go hop around. We didn't even talk about it. Come on in, you want something to eat? Hey, stay the night, I got a couch. You know, we didn't sign it. Okay, I've signed a 3-page contract. You'll stay. You promise to leave this couch, this table, just as you found it. Will you pay a damage deposit? And da-da-da. Absolutely ridiculous how it's gotten in this world over fear. Where there's fear, fear, fear. You give a deposit, and then you're waiting for the deposit back. No, there's a scratch here, and there's a piece of lint was there, and that's going to cost you your whole deposit. You want to contest it? Take it then. You know, it's like it's ridiculous. It's blown way, way, way out of proportion. And so I like the sayings like the Amish, you know, and many hands make for light work. Can we not ease into our mind and trust that if we go for this purpose, that the Spirit will orchestrate collaborative things in our life that will seem to involve the symbols of the world, people helping out, things helping out, things going our way, a flow starting to happen just from our alignment of our purpose. Can we not trust that that's the way it's going to go? Because that's really what the promise is. It's like, if you will follow me, I will take care of everything. Practically speaking, I feel like the whole world is my community, so I sometimes talk about community but really it's all community of the mind. But in our community, did we do a count, what was it, 40? 45? So this is 45 of us. You can just imagine 45 people, I can't say living together under one roof because there's a lot of motion with that 45, but still there's a lot of decision making, and you still have the same logistics to deal with 45 bodies. 45 bodies to feed. In my case it'd be 44 now. Francis, 43. We're dwindling on the food part, but 44 places to sleep, or 45 places to sleep. Transportation, movement about, and maintaining buildings and properties and so on and so forth. You know, there seems to be, you still have the same logistics, but actually it seems like the more you get into function and presence, you start to feel more and more that presence is everything. That presence is your gift. That's what you have to offer. It's your greatest offering. It's you're honoring God by that presence. And therefore you're honoring all your brothers and sisters in that presence. And then the things get handled. Just what they were telling me today. After lunch they were going to have a talk in here with the organizers, and there's logistics. Logistics on whatever, cost and transportations and things and so on and so forth. And all of those things, before you even go head toward those logistics, you have to have that reminder in mind. What is all this for? What is the purpose? Even with spending money on something, to buy this or not to buy this, to spend this on this versus that. You know, you think about how much complexity and time the mind gyrates around these kind of questions. You know, what to buy, how much to buy, when to buy it, do I need to buy more of it? You know, these are like daily kind of thoughts that go through. There's a lot of energy that gets put into those things. Or fixing things. What's broken needs to be fixed. Fixed why? Because we have people here. People need resources, they need water, they need stuff to drink, stuff to eat, you know. It's all kind of wound together. But if we come back into that purpose and we trust that that it's all being orchestrated for my good, and it's all, what could you not accept if you but knew that there is one who knows your greater good? There's always that presence that knows your greater good, and that presence is behind all the shadow images. It hasn't left us. It's still with us. It's right here with us. And we can try to deviate from it and think about the future or think about the past, but if we really want to, we can come back to that presence and realize that all is well. All is well. I always say, right now there are no problems. The problems are always remembered or anticipated. There aren't any problems right now. If you really sink into it, you really can feel the truth of that. So my wish for you, Jeremy, and my wish for all of us is simplicity. Is truly to live simply. And to live in prayer so that we stay so open that instead of believing and thinking that we personally have to find our way, navigate through time and space, personally have to figure things out, that we personally have to be responsible not only for a body but for other bodies, and the more it just gets more complex, the more bodies there seem to be in the mix. But there's always that release point